What's up and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. We are still doing X-Men films because X-Men 97 is still happening. I've done all of the X-Men films. I did New Mutants, so I'm starting into X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is definitely a second look. I've definitely seen this film before. Probably seen this film more than I should. It's really not a great film. But we're going to talk about it. So click that subscribe button because I'm asking you to. I don't know. People always come up with like reasons. I think I'm asking you to is probably the best reason. Anyway, um, this film is the origin of Wolverine, which is, I promise you, way more interesting in the graphic novel than this film is. Although this film did what I always wanted to do with, the filmmaker side of me that read the graphic novel, always wanted to bring Sabretooth into it and tie them closer. And this film does do that. This film brings Sabretooth in a lot earlier and brings that dynamic so that way they feel like always predestined to be. And I think that's one of the things that this film actually does right. Um, and actually fixes. It's one of the only things that Bryan Singer didn't do right is by having Tyler Mane just standing there as Sabretooth. I thought that was so weird watching that in the first X-Men film. I remember watching that in theaters, and like Wolverine and Sabretooth don't even like recognize each other, and Sabretooth like can't speak. Like he has no lines. So it's just like so we got Liev Schreiber here. So we immediately upgraded. And there gets to be a dynamic here. I don't know, he's the best Sabretooth, but it's we have course corrected so that way we can actually have a dynamic between these two characters and show and develop this frenemy thing that happens where they start out as friends and become enemies. It's probably the strongest thing that this Wolverine script has going for it is the dynamic between these two characters, because it's something that was really missing from the X-Men universe. And arguably still is. Sabretooth is a pretty main character. I think in the one of the animated series, X-Men Evolution or Wolverine and the X-Men or something, he becomes an X-Men for a while. So it's good to know more about him. Anyway, yeah. I that's I'm trying to think of the positives here. Positives are Ryan Reynolds was cast as Deadpool. People recognize that casting was solid from the beginning, that he was always sort of the perfect choice for Deadpool. And then they just kind of shot that in the face and then moved on. um Positives. There are other cameos here that I like. Some characters we really just never get to see otherwise. Little people that pop up a little bit. Kevin Durand as Blob would be an example of a standout. But yeah, we've also got Taylor Kitsch's Gambit. I'm not really sure that was the best Gambit casting, but it is the only representation of Gambit we've ever had on film. So I wish we could have more. We do have the future of X-Men is now in the MCU. I'm really hoping that they do something with Gambit. It really kind of, one of the reasons I dislike the death of him in X-Men 97 so much is because it's like, I feel like I've been waiting so long for him to be a part of the cinematic universe. And it's always just been so Wolverine centric. And it's cool. I like Wolverine. There are other characters. One of my favorite things about the X-Men is how many of the characters I actually like. And it always just lands on Wolverine, and the story is told by Wolverine, is told around Wolverine. And one of the things I liked about when we reset with First Class is they took that aspect out, and it was actually, we're starting to look at the other X-Men. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then we Days of Future Past it in because we were like, well, we need Wolverine again. So it's not that Wolverine is not great. I love him. I love his other movies. I think the next one is pretty solid, and I love Logan. Um, but this is a mess. This They just don't know what to do with this. It doesn't even really make sense continuity wise with anything we've seen before or we'll see after. In terms of Stryker, I didn't even think Danny Houston made a good Brian, like pre Brian Cox. Um, yeah, I just I can't even give him props for that. Uh, I'm there's it doesn't have audio description on Disney Plus. This one doesn't have audio description anywhere. Probably should have led with that. Um, but you know, the audio description is not going to tell you how terrible this film looks and how cheaply made Fox invested into this series. I don't understand. You know, we talk a lot now about Sony and their side Spider Verse with all these random characters that they keep getting invested in, so they can keep having the rights to Spider Man. Um, and they're invested in all these side characters that never would have gotten movies otherwise. And they were almost going to do that with Origins. They had in the works. They had an X-Men Origins Storm and an X-Men Origins Magneto in the works. But when Wolverine underperformed and was a critical failure, they pulled it. And I think that was probably the wrong decision, because just because one film didn't work doesn't mean that the other films wouldn't have worked if you had backed them better and made sure that the directors were good. They're completely different stories with completely different characters. Both of those characters have really interesting and unique origin stories. So I think both of those films had potential. This one was just sort of ruined. There is a graphic novel that explains Wolverine's origin as James Howlett growing up, and a little bit of we see in the beginning hints at that. But that's like that like 1% of the movie is from the graphic novel. The rest of it is just sort of like made up. Um, and Making Deadpool into Weapon 11, I guess that insinuates that Wolverine really is not Weapon X, but he's Weapon 10. I guess it's like Roman numerals. Is that what we're doing? I didn't notice that until now, but they kept doing it. I was like, wait a minute, is that what that means? That was one of the things I noticed on the repeat viewing. They kept Weapon 11. I was like, does that mean he's Weapon 10? Anyway, um, yeah, so eh, I struggle to find nice things to say about the film. Look, his claws look terrible. This is the film that, as a sighted person, whenever you see, I notice people have chopped it down. I've seen gifs of his claws. He has these claws that look like they're from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They're like the worst uh, computer graphic claws he's had in the entire franchise. It's funny too because these aren't even his first claws. So they couldn't even use the same claws and the same budget for claws that they had in the other films. They messed up something they'd already done correctly, which is kind of insane when you think about it. Um, and then the whole Deadpool thing. He looks terrible with his like mouth sewn shut at the end, and it's all this insane, the stupid, the powers, and I can't with this film. Anyway, we talk a lot about studio interference and is it a good director? Is it a bad director thing? Um, I think there are things here that Gavin Hood did right. I think where the studio involvement came in was just budgetary stuff. Like they ran out of budget to be able to properly animate the claws. But I don't think the studio was like, it'd be really cool if we just fucked with Deadpool. That would be really cool. Like, why not? This is what we want you to do with this specific character. I don't think they forced that on Gavin Hood. I think that was just like in the screenplay and everybody was cool with it. They're like, oh, that's a cool twist. and nobody really thought about it. Nobody ever asks X-Men fans, do you feel like this is like something that's going to land with your community? Because I feel like if you had asked somebody who was an actual X-Men fan, they would have been like, no, that's terrible. That's dumb. What are you doing? You're taking Merc with a mouth and literally sewing his mouth shut, and then you're giving him like Cyclops' powers. What are you doing? Um, yeah, it's they definitely do some shitty stuff here, and it's funny that Ryan Reynolds has gotten to address that directly in his Deadpool films, making a joke about the shitty version of himself from X-Men Origins. Anyway, uh, yeah, this is not a great film, but it does do some things right, which is why I'm not going to totally tank it. One of the things we keep we keep bashing this film, but one of the things it did right was actually flesh out Sabretooth, which needed to happen because it did not. Bryan Singer treated him like he was, I don't know, Lurch from the Addams Family. Like, no. This dude's an actual character, man. Even the X-Men animated series, he has more dialogue than that. Um, yeah. So this is probably going to be my lowest grade. It's really hard for me to grade X-Men films low because I inherently enjoy them. Even the fact that I would never have cast Taylor Kitsch as Gambit. Gambit is in this, and it's the only cinematic representation I have of Gambit. So in a weird way, it's still a positive for me. You know, he would not have been my choice. Neither would Channing Tatum, for that matter. While we're on the topic, we have to find a better Gambit. It's probably somebody we haven't thought of, to be totally honest. There's probably the right actor. He's probably just on a TV show somewhere. Who's that guy that's doing Will Trent? He's got a great accent. Can we get him to do a little bit of Cajun? Put him, Ramon Rodriguez. There you go. Let's try him out. But I don't know. That was just a quick little thought that I had. I was like, who's doing a really great Southern accent right now? Oh, that guy. Um, yeah. I'm gonna give X-Men Origins Wolverine a C. So yeah, this and Dark Phoenix are kind of at the bottom of my X-Men radar. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll be back next week with the Wolverine. So until then, I'll see you guys on the other side.